let's get it.
Welcome to the June edition. I guess slides on this screen. I got to look at this camera. Okay, here we go.
I'm like up, down, left, right.
Camera one, camera two. Here, I'm going to move this back over here so that I don't do that. That's funny. Cool. All right. Hello, everybody. So my name is Heather Cook. I am Principal PM for the Customer Advocacy Group for M365, and I'm here with one of our wonderful hosts, Wes Preston, who's a board member of MGCI. Hi, Wes. I think Sharon is not going to join us today, correct?
I believe that is true.
Okay, cool. All right, awesome. Well, we'll get rocking, and thanks to those of you who have joined us and those of you who are going to listen in on the on-demand here later after we put it up on YouTube. So thank you for being here. For our agenda today, intros, the topic is speaker selection, and then a bit of an AMA. So we'll get to that. For all of our events, be they in person, online, webinars, and all of that, we always have a code of conduct just to empower each other to be good listeners, to be inclusive, and to not tolerate any behavior that is untoward. And so thank you for creating a safe and welcoming environment for each other. Appreciate that. You are here as part of the Microsoft Global Community Initiative, or as we call MGCI, because we love our acronyms at Microsoft. The MGCI is made up of a board of community members of 10, and then we have about 60 regional leaders across the world. The MGCI is all about helping empower event producers with different kinds of amplification through our channels, production training, which you're on right now, blogs, networking, technology, best practices, and more for the Microsoft community, along with the communitydays.org site, which is kept up and administrated by the community and supported by us, by Microsoft, your one-stop shop for all community events in the Microsoft ecosystem. So if you would like, please introduce yourself in chat. What's your name? Where are you from? What events do you work on? And if you want to put a link to your LinkedIn profile, that's great. We can all connect with each other. So please do that too. Yahoo. Again, Sharon and Wes. Wes, introduce yourself, please.
Hello, my name is Wes Preston. I am also out here at TechCon. I am normally from Minnesota. I guess I'm always from Minnesota, but actually right. I'm always from Wisconsin. I currently live in Minnesota. So
okay.
We'll go with that. I have been running SharePoint Saturday, Community Day, whatever we want to call it, since about 2008, I think. So I've been doing it for a little bit. I have a team. I am part of a team, I should say, that ranges from 3 to 7, depending on where we are in our cycle. We usually do an event once, maybe twice a year. And ours is currently scheduled for September 19th. So if you're in the area of Minnesota or care to join us and come up and visit in the fall, September 19th is a fantastic time to be in Minnesota, weather-wise even, believe it or not. It's not going to snow for a few more months after that. I'm also a Microsoft MVP, and I work in the SharePoint space, lists, teams, all that fun stuff, as well as Power Apps. So we'll try and bring what we can to the conversation here about speaker selection. I was hoping to sneak in the person that I generally partner with on that activity for our event, but she is also here at the conference, and she is busy this morning with some prep stuff. So that's Sarah Hazy. So if you ever want to talk to her about speaker prep, she's got fantastic insights. So I'm going to try and bring what I can from our event in here. So any other intro stuff, or do we just jump right into slides? I can never remember the order.
We just had the Microsoft team, me, Caroline, and Brian, work on all of this good stuff with you all and with everybody. So that was it. And then we just pop into the topic. So hi again and yay. So there we go. Let's get to the topic. So yes. Awesome. So
speaker, I jotted, like, we've got some slides here that we'll walk through for kind of talking points. And again, I like to operate these as an office hours type of thing. So this isn't going to be, Heather and I preaching at you for almost an hour. So if you have questions, chime in chat, raise your hand, whatever you need to do. But we've got some talking points we jotted down on slides, so we'll kind of walk through that. I did have a few notes that I jotted down this morning that I wanted to even kind of use to set the stage with a little bit. So the speaker and session selection, they go alongside each other because obviously you've got usually one, sometimes two speakers per session. And there are a bunch of things that are tied to this same process. So the first one is your date, figuring out when your date is going to be. And that usually requires you to have a venue also assigned. So, and I'm mentioning these things for specific reasons. One, when you pick your date, that's going to allow you to kind of back set the process and look at when are you going to open speaker selection, when are you going to close speaker selection, when are you going to get communications out about that. So these are all parts of this process. Generally, when I hear speaker selection, that's the time where we've already collected all of our sessions, all of our submissions from speakers, and this is the time where we're going to sit down, go through all of those and narrow them down and kind of build the schedule. So it requires, so it's a specific piece of timing. So I just wanted to make sure that people think about that, because you do need to have enough lead time for your speakers. Local speakers can be pretty flexible, but if you've got folks coming in from other areas and traveling, you want to give them enough time to do that. So that's why that's having your date and being able to back that up for your speaker, call for speakers, and this activity are all kind of fit into that. The other thing I want to mention is venue information. So understanding how many rooms you're going to have and getting at least a high level overview of how big those rooms are. Those are going to come into play when it comes to figuring out where the sessions are going to be in your rooms and in the schedule for the day. And all of these things kind of loop back to your speaker selection as well. So I just wanted to kind of throw those out there as some baseline things that they're kind of dependencies. So things that we want to keep in mind as we're going through the selection process. All right, that was kind of a lot to like jump in before even that was slide 0. So, great. Did you have anything to add there, Heather?
No, I think all of that is absolutely on point. Yeah, I think, there's things that happen before speaker selection that have been in some other event trainings, but, it's like all of this speaker selection comes at, you've already got your venue, you already kind of know your rooms, you know what your setup is going to be, that kind of thing, because speaker selection predicates like the number, right? How many sessions can you have? How many? And then sort of knowing your skeleton of your schedule, right? Because you don't want to do a speaker call and you're like, woohoo, everybody. And you're like, oh, wait a minute, I only got 24 slots. Whoops.
Exactly.
Right. Which you wouldn't believe that, like, I've even gotten into that where you get all excited and then you're like, oh my goodness, we don't have enough room for all the people that we'd want to come do this. Right. So there are a few things that come before this process, although it can kind of go in parallel, but you kind of got to know your space, if you're doing tracks, your number of rooms and all of that kind of thing, and what fits into a day with breaks, lunch, maybe a keynote or whatever. So like all of that thinking goes into it kind of before you get to this to be able to put out a call for content. So
yep.
Anyway, there you go.
Yeah, yep. It's kind of crazy how all the dependency loopbacks kind of fit in there, but it's a big deal. Yep. I mean, you mentioned tracks. That is another one that's a big deal because for our event, I run sponsorships, and we have to know what tracks we want to offer. If I'm going to do something like have a track sponsorship, right? So that's and that plays into the number of rooms because you don't want to take up too many rooms with not sponsors, but you don't want to take up too many rooms with tracks because you want to have enough room for general sessions and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
Always things that are kind of running into each other.
Yeah, for sure.
The other thing I'll mention too is that why we're doing the selection piece and the scheduling piece at the same time tends to be, well, I guess there's a couple of reasons. One, the tool helps us with that. So for those of us that are using Sessionize, there's some really great speaker selection components to that. And that leads you right into basically taking the sessions that you select and putting them into a grid so that you can kind of see what that day is going to look like. So those things happen basically back to back. We'll take our list of speakers, actually our list of sessions, and we'll pare it down into, what we think is going to fit in the schedule. Then we try and fill up the schedule as best we can. And then we have to kind of loop back because we can't have speakers, at the same time being in more than one place. You don't want to put people back to back. There's a lot of things to keep in mind when you're doing the session scheduling piece of it. So here's me jumping like all way past anything that's on the slides. So have we got any questions before I keep going with the slide content here? I don't think I saw anything. All right. So other things, let's hit some of the slide stuff because that is actually some good talking points too. So relevance to audience, when you're looking at the session submissions, trying to have an idea of what you want to have. I don't want to say as a theme necessarily, but kind of taking a read of the room a little bit before you start looking at sessions and having a bit of an understanding of what your community is looking for. Like right now is a great time to say that there's tons of Copilot and AI stuff that's coming down. So you want to make sure that you have enough content to cover those topics at some level and a level that meets your audience desire or your audience needs. But also, our particular community, our region we have a lot of attendees from government sessions, from state and local governments. They're not usually doing bleeding edge stuff, so it's important to them, and they give us very clear feedback, right? That they want to have still a lot of the core capabilities content. So relevance to your audience is important. It's something you definitely want to keep in mind, and if you have enough time and have a way to kind of, I don't want to say document it, but kind of collect those thoughts before you get into the session selection, it's helpful. You're not going to go down there and be able to suit everything exactly, but if you can align as much as you can, that tends to help your attendees quite a bit. Speaker expertise kind of goes along with that, right? So if you know that you've got people that are going to align with that, with those audience needs, with those topics that you want to cover, the longer you're around and kind of seeing who's speaking on what topics, you start to get some ideas on who's got some really good skills in specific areas. Not that they can't spread out and speak on other things, but some of those things become clear over time. So it's good to have that as part of your considerations. Uniqueness of topics. So that's also something to keep in mind. And I'm going to give a couple of two perspectives on that. If we spend too much time on Copilot or on Teams or on, Viva or whatever the flavor of the day is, we're skipping on some other topics that people are looking for. So it's important to kind of look at that swath of sessions that you have out there, and pick a couple that seem maybe not new, that might be new to you. It might be something that's outside of your comfort level. It might be something that maybe you haven't had a session on in previous events on. Throw some in there. You never know what your attendees are looking for and how that might affect them, or how that might, bring their skill level up in something they hadn't considered before. So you want to look for some variety in topics, just like you're looking for variety in speakers. So that's another thing too, is that we're, one thing that we do explicitly with our events is we look for new speakers. So it's super easy, like Heather mentioned, we generally get, many events will get a ton of session submissions. And it's from a lot of speakers that have done a lot of events, which is fantastic. And you want to leverage those folks. But the way they got there was by someone else letting them in the first time. So we want to make sure that when we're looking at those session submissions, or even while the call for speakers is open, is that you're prodding people to say, hey, you know what, you should consider putting a session out there. So that's something that I want to make sure people are considering. I would say the first, if you're a starter event and you're first getting into it, it's really super easy to pick all the known quantities and fill all your slots with them, because they're going to do a great job. But if you can keep that in mind as you're building your event and kind of doing your call for speakers, I highly encourage it. So, yeah,
100%. I mean, Wes is touching on some great points that there's the kind of the uber overarching thing, and then you're totally getting into some nuance too, which is awesome. But it is true about new speakers, giving people a chance to, get their feet wet, is really important. And then diversity in who we are and who comes to the table, and when we see ourselves on stage and stuff too. So keeping those things in mind is really important as well. As you're picking speakers and putting things together, it's like there's narratives, right? Like, what narratives are you trying to get across? What different types of people from different maybe industries, different job types, all that kind of stuff. That's that good soup, that you're trying to make, for sure. So yeah.
Yeah, anytime we can add to that, add the flavor to that soup, the better it gets. And you never know. Like we try and get at least a handful of new folks in every time, and some of them will come in, they'll do a session, and that's the last. They'll be, well, that's not my thing, and that's the last time you'll hear from them. Others end up starting a stretch of doing these things over years. So you never know what you're going to find out with those. Excuse me. It's kind of a side topic, but one of the things that we've started to do is, I don't want to say formalize yet, but we're trying to be deliberate about not only bringing new people in, but also providing support if they want it, to help them get up to speed. Spend some time with them on putting their slide deck together. Spend some time talking through, pacing and just kind of what it looks like when you're doing these sessions. Essentially giving them a mentor or a coach if they want it, is just another way to kind of encourage people to come in and give it a shot, and kind of break out of their shell a little bit. So if you can put things like that in place, if you've got the right folks on your team that you can leverage and lean on for those things, I highly encourage it.
I agree.
All right. So criterias, I don't like the word criteria, but it's, speaker selection, like we mentioned, the expertise piece of it is, at least for the folks that are known quantities, that's what makes it easy for us. And it's one of those things we have to pay attention to. We don't let go too easy. Is I'm going to pick this person, and this person, because I know they're going to do a good thing. If you lean too heavy on that, you fill up your schedule too quick. So you got to, balance it, right? Know who's really good at talking on what, and bring them in, but balance it with the new folks as well. And the communication skills is another one. If you have the opportunity to see people, like at TechCon, when you're at a different conference, it might be a different community day event, might be a TechCon, might be a whatever. If you can have an opportunity to see other people speak, that gives you a great peek into how they're going to perform at your event as well. Because sometimes folks are really good at that. Sometimes they're working on their skills and skilling up. So it's good to know who's good at what and who is really good with certain topics, and just kind of the more you can learn who's in the community and how well they're doing, the better it is for you to balance and build your own schedule. Some of these things are, audience engagement. I think that's something where you're not going to have that with all speakers. You'll find that speakers that do get involved with audience, if their topic allows it, really, because that's another piece of it too, tend to be sessions that people get really excited about. At least the ones that I've seen. Like I said, audiences are different in every locale. But we've got. I can think of 2 or 3 sessions, or 2 or 3 speakers or sets of speakers, that when they do a session, they're all about audience. And, I don't want to say entertaining, but they're all about involving folks in the room. Those, in many cases, tend to be the biggest draw, because they're usually really good content. They're entertaining, and they involve folks. So those are good energy drivers of your event. So it's really, again, most of the, I don't want to say most, it's easy to look at a list of sessions and see people, basically classrooms for each one of those. And many of them will be in that state. But if you can find, shake it up a little bit and find a couple of other types of content, case studies is another good one, right? So, Heather mentioned, if you can partner with people from different industries and different companies, those are, I wouldn't say those have audience engagement other than the many questions that will come out of them. But those sessions for us are also some of the biggest draws. Anytime you can get folks that are in the community, in your community, presenting on ideas that have worked for them and technology that's worked for them with specific examples, people gobble that up. That is some of the best content, in my opinion. All right.
I agree.
And shaking it up, right? That's also kind of the reading the room. Like, what is your event? What are the industries in your area? And if you can serve them as part of your setting up your schedule, again, that's a great match for your audience.
Yeah. The other thing too, I've been thinking about, Wes, is that like with even like an event like this, or so like we're at TechCon, right? And this is a community produced by a third party, an event producer. You have to pay to come. Then we have community led events that are like community days or collab days or other things that are like 1 day free events. And so I think we're talking a little bit more about those 1 day paid or 1 day free events that you all would maybe be putting on in an office or at the college or that kind of thing, right? So that kind of deal. But I do think it's really interesting thinking about local and like what you were saying about industry and stuff, is that here's the other thing. Customers, like people who use Microsoft software, like you kind of turn right and left and there's businesses all around you that use Microsoft, right? Most people do in some way, right? The other thing would be is like, what are people in the community? Could you have somebody come and speak and talk about their experience? Having a customer, and we call them customers from microspeak, but just somebody in the community talking about how they use technology, and that could be a really cool session or a roundtable that could lead to a lot of different things too. So food for thought on that about, you have your speakers that may be Microsoft, maybe a Microsoft employee, maybe a Microsoft MVP, maybe just a pillar in your community. My dad was a manager of JCPenney stores his entire career. And he went to the Kiwanis and the chamber and all kinds of other things and always talked about technology and people and all of that stuff. So don't forget those people in your community, the people who run the newspaper or whatever, like having those connections and bringing those people into the fold. They bring all of their, employees potentially. And, so that's just something, it's a different angle, but thinking about that for your speakers too is really important. So, yeah.
Yeah. I love all the different things. Just even this week, I had two guys sitting in one of my sessions, talking a lot and bringing up lots of questions. And I was talking about Power Apps and kind of and along those lines. Turns out these two guys were from a car manufacturer, and they were talking about using Microsoft list-driven data and then creating Power Apps on top of that list data. So generally not an enterprise way of doing things when they're building apps for use on the car assembly line. Right. So it was normally, if I think of people doing something at that level, it's like, oh, you better get that into Dataverse or, something a little bit more controllable. But it was it was interesting. And I am fascinated by the variety of companies that are out there, right? If I can pull the room a little bit here and there, I'll find out where people are coming from. And I love learning about the companies because a good chunk of the time, I didn't even know there was an industry for whatever they bring up. I'm like, what? Right. How do you have a company for that?
Yeah. Well,
and they all bring something new to it, and it's just that's part of what many of us love about being in this community. So
yeah, agreed. No, very cool. You want to flip into tools and platforms?
Yeah, one more. We can go to the next slide. The one last thing I want to mention with the new local and visiting speakers, we kind of covered the new speakers, but I'll also mention that there's one thing that we'll do is kind of look at balancing local versus visiting speakers, because it's a local event. It's for your local community, and I think it's a great time to highlight the folks that you have in your region or area to give them opportunities. As much as I love bringing in friends from across the country, and we will continue to do that, we try and find a nice balance there. So something else to kind of keep in mind.
Yeah, agreed. Oh, that's a great point for sure. Good balance. All right, tools. Now, I cannot speak to some of the other newer ones that are out there because I haven't used them. But when it comes to Sessionize, Sessionize was, I think,
correct me if I'm wrong, Heather, one of the first tools that was out there that kind of revolutionized the way that we did call for speakers and kind of manage that process, because it gave us a tool where we could set up a call for speakers. They would come to a site and they would be able to lanyard.com. I do vaguely remember that, Tom. Oh
yeah. I'm like, wow. Yes,
yeah,
that's what I do.
I saw that name and I'm like, oh my God. But there's probably at least 2 or 3 platforms out there that do this. But what they'll manage that's the call for speakers, right? So we don't have to go back to the days of sending emails, copying and pasting things into a spreadsheet and doing all kinds of that nasty stuff. They have tools for us. It makes it easier for speakers because we can submit our sessions consistently. It gives us a tool to kind of keep us a library of the sessions that we might be doing. But from the speaker selection part and the scheduling, it's a great tool to take a look at, because it's it's I believe it's still free for community events, for small events. Yep. If not, it's a nominal fee. But it gives us tools during the selection process to go in and do ratings, right? So at the last time we did it, I think we had to go from 170 some sessions down to 32. That's pretty harsh, right? So it gives us tools to be able to rate things and kind of pare things down over the process. And then once you've got it down, we don't wait till we get to 32 before we start slotting them. We usually get down to, I don't know, maybe under 50. And then once we have that set of content, we'll start slotting them into a schedule and then figure out what works. Because you end up doing scheduling is almost its own art form. Figuring out, we mentioned themes or tracks. If you want to have one, you can drop all of your stuff into one column. That's great, but then put it in the order that makes sense for users. There's a lot of this gets into the nuancy things, but the tools, Sessionize helps us do all of that now. So I'm pretty excited about it. I don't know if Heather or you or Tom have what the other tools are and what I
put them in the chat already.
They're in the chat already?
Yeah, some of them are. Yeah. So
go.
Yeah. Well, and the Sessionize is I guess I would call it the pure session, call for sessions, dealing with content, speakers, and all of that. That's very specific with Sessionize. And then, we've got other, partners, friends, producers who have put out, more of like an event apps that do like more than that, right? And so Just Attend is one. I know the great folks who produce, Comsby Next, work on that one. And then there's Run Events as well, who do a lot of the collab days, and they run European Collab Summit and stuff. So those are bigger, more event app types. And then also we have Hoova, which is a even bigger event app that a lot of the larger produced shows use, right? So there's a few tools of the trade kind of in there, but those are some links to them. And yes, and as Jonathan was saying, Just Attend does also have the call for content functionality in it as well. So yeah, so those are the ones that we work with because our producing friends either use them or offer them, and then Sessionize is that third party that has been around. It's kind of been around for a long time, and then Lanyard. Gosh, I haven't. Yeah, Tom. I mean, Tom. How about you? Anything else on your Tom Daly's on, folks? Who's our board member and who runs communitydays.org. So I don't know if you have any that you want to pipe in.
No. 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 You guys covered it all. I mean, it's. The one thing that I'm saying I'm actually building for like our events is this AI agent that does this review process for us, but it's not perfected yet, so it can't be rolled out to the wild.
Okay, that's exciting though.
That'll be cool to see though.
Yeah. I can demo it eventually. It's not ready. It's just a big mess right now, but that was my goal because we have so many people, and I want like a first cut, and then I want to look close at stuff. I also had the idea like it can go out, and it was actually crawling and scraping the M365 conference and generating a report of like what topics, and then researching, the latest trends. And, I had a bunch of blogs I was scanning. So it was a cool idea, but it's not ready.
Cool.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay. See how that comes out.
Yeah, that's awesome. And speaking of Tom, so like I was saying, communitydays.org, the one-stop shop for all of our events, which you can list your event for free, folks, if you have one up there, as long as it's longer than 4 hours. We don't have user groups up there. We may not ever have user groups up there, but this is all for like free and produced events. And Tom always needs help testing things. And if you are interested and you're like, ooh, that sounds cool, I'd like to get in the mix, I'm going to put a link in here. It's a form you can fill out to be a tester and work with Tom and the team testing and QAing and doing cool things on the back end for communitydays.org. That's my plug for that. There you go. So, so those are both in the chat now. So,
and I'll throw out there too, for those of us that speak at events, keep bringing up communitydays.org. I bring it up in every single session. I'm not going to spend tons of time on it, but I bring it up during the intro of every single session. And I want to say we're still at like 80 to 90% of the people in the room have never heard of it. And these are all attendees that can and should be attending our local events. You tell them, where to find it. You tell them that many of the same speakers they're seeing this week and their companies are paying thousands of dollars to see are going to be speaking locally for them. That gets their attention. So
sure. Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
So encourage everybody to share it and inform everybody else. But that's the only way, and it is growing. So thank you everybody for taking a look and sharing. It's amazing to see it kind of develop now. It's starting to really get moving.
It's a fantastic site and tool that we wouldn't be able to do this without, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And Deb, to your point, I think one of the things so user groups have a kind of they're not entirely a different beast in a way, but they kind of are. So one of the things I know so Brian Hart, who I mentioned earlier, and Josh Leparati on my team internally at Microsoft, they are the engineering team behind the Microsoft Tech Community. So techcommunity.microsoft.com, which is our community platform, right? Where the forums are, the blogs, events, and all of that stuff. Where we have our MGCI community hub is there now too. They are in process looking at user groups and seeing if there can be listings for the user groups on that space. So more to come on that, but that is something that they're looking at. And I know that people use meetup.com, they use Eventbrite, they use your own, websites. We also have people who have their user groups in the community tenant as well. But that sort of place where you can list your user group so that people can find it, know it, understand when your meetings are. That's something that is being talked about right now. The Power Platform community platform has that, as does Fabric. So we're looking at a similar solution for Microsoft 365. So just to say that out loud in front of everybody. So yeah, cool.
All right. So tools wise, I think that kind of gives folks a swath of the tools that are available for if you're looking for a full event piece, or if you're looking for just the Sessionize piece. That's there's a lot of great options out there. Sessionize was the one that we use. I think there's probably those two other tools, Run Events and Just Attend. I think are starting to creep in with the numbers are creeping up, I think, but those are good places to start. I would highly encourage taking a look at those. What else was I going to say about that? I had one other point and I already lost it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm sure it'll come back.
Yeah.
All right, so let's check out the next one here.
Okay. Selection committee.
Good topic. Depending on how long your org's been around, you may or may not have a formal committee. You might just have the people that are running the event and that everyone's involved with the selection piece. It kind of depends on how your organization is set or is set up. But at the end of the day, what it involves is the folks that sit down and do the process. We sit down, once the call for speakers is over, once our sessions have kind of been cleaned up and organized a little bit. Ideally, which almost never happens for us, is if someone has time to go out there and look through things ahead of time, before that session where you're doing the picking of sessions. And I'll tell you one thing: plan time for it. It's usually we've got a group of we'll go 3 to 6 people sometimes in our selection committee. I hesitate to call them committee, but our selection folks. And when we sit down with 150 to 170 sessions and go through the whole process of narrowing them down, making selections and getting them slotted into time, into a schedule, that can take 2 to 3 hours or more, depending on how many, side activities happen over the course of that meeting, because it's usually a bunch of friends. But yeah, so make sure you set time aside for that. If you can bring in this is another place where you want to pay attention to the folks that are in the committee so that they can bring in different perspectives, different things that they want to see as part of the event, different people. Getting the diversity of voices is key. And I think it's I don't want to say the longer those of us that have been here are around, we kind of get set into slots. Shake it up, bring some new people in so they can give a new perspective. And it could be, it could be someone in industry. It could be someone that's generally an attendee and a consumer. There are so many different ways that you can shake up this criteria or shake up this group in good ways, right? I highly encourage you to, check that out. Get feedback and from your community to help set up what that committee is going to look like. So
yeah, and some of this are our local regional events. It's really great just to have that perspective, different perspectives at the table for this stuff. It's really, really important. And then also there's a lot of opportunities to work with the larger produced events. They often will have a content committee that you can participate on. So that's something to think about. If you're at a show and you're like, I really like this event and, I'd really like to volunteer, participate, ask the producer and be like, hey, do you have a content committee? And would you, I'd love to be on it kind of thing, So like there are opportunities for that too, because we all need those perspectives. We're doing that with our events. There is usually a community committee that is already formulated, usually by the producer. And if not, we highly suggest it. So just think about that too. That's another opportunity to potentially volunteer some time to learn and to get involved in the mix. So, yep. Cool. So there we go. How are we doing on time? We've got about 11 minutes left, 12 minutes left.
Okay.
So, cool.
So creating an agenda. I'm just kind of going off of stuff just right off the top of my head when I'm thinking about this. When it comes to, I guess an example I want to give from our event is we used to have, you're gonna set up a schedule and it's gonna look like, how long are my sessions going to look? How big are the breaks between sessions? When do I have time for lunch? When do I have time for registration? All of this fun stuff. And I think earlier in our event's life, we had 4 to 5 sessions in a room, session slots. And over time, we've learned that, we've changed for a couple of different reasons. One, a lot of content is great, but it's also exhausting, right? So we've gone from what was at least 5, it might have been more, down to 4 sessions. So basically we have 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. Another consideration that we have is that when we're setting up what that schedule looks like is making sure that there's enough time between sessions, not just for folks to get from room to room, but to spend time with your sponsors. A lot of us running smaller events and the folks running big events as well, there are some very deliberate, even you think about TechCon, right? There are some very deliberate things that they do to get sponsor attendee interaction, right? They're setting up things like happy hours. They're setting the food is in the same space as the sponsors, to the point where you have to walk through the sponsors to get to the food, right? It's a very deliberate choice, because we're trying to build that integration or that interaction. So with scheduling, making sure that you're setting your schedule up in a way that you have those opportunities for your sponsors to interact with your attendees. Again, I have a sponsor bias because that I'm the sponsorship guy. So I'm trying to find other ways to make it encouraging for folks to come in and have an opportunity to meet with those folks. So creating your agenda is part of that. I had another thought there too. So we mentioned earlier with tracks, right? So if you have so many rooms, you have so many places where you could set up a number of different tracks. There were years, I think, where we've had 6 tracks and we have 10 rooms, right? That's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of stuff to kind of structure. So kind of finding a balance of ways that you want to organize your sessions and organize those rooms. Sometimes you do it because you want to make sure that you're calling out, not hot topics, but relevant topics to your audience. Sometimes you might set it up in a way because you want to foster sponsorship, right? Get sponsors that talk to different tracks. So those are other things to keep in mind as well. Timing sessions. Usually this isn't, appropriately. I don't know what Copilot came up with on that one, but being consistent with the way the rest of the community is doing things is important. I've seen sessions, where you have 20-minute sessions or lightning sessions, all the way up to workshop level types of things. So finding out what's good for your audience is important. I think most of us will settle on. Many of us will settle on 60-minute sessions or 70-minute sessions, maybe 50. Kind of in that range is a good for a conference type event. If you're doing a workshop, obviously that's different. But when it comes to a conference type event, I think 45 to 70 minutes a session time is good, both for creating your schedule and because it'll probably align with a lot of the content for speakers that present on a regular basis. So those are things to keep in mind. Avoiding schedule conflicts. That's one of our challenges. Once we get that list of sessions pared down and we start placing them in a schedule, there might be conflicts of 2 people at the same time talking about the same topic. You don't want to do that because it splits the audience. I like to make it, if we have a track or if we have a room that's kind of consistent throughout the day on a topic, that it's a building up kind of thing where later sessions might build on topics that were considered earlier or talked about earlier in the day. So there's lots of fun nuance there. Here, and what I think is probably one of the biggest things you need to keep in mind, your schedule is never going to be perfect. You can try for that thing to match what your vision is, but you're not the one dictating what sessions are coming. You're not the one dictating what other people's schedules look like. So kind of set that expectation now that you're going to do as good a job as you can coming up with a quote perfect schedule. But we'll also, some other nuances there is you'll have the conversation of, do you want to have presenters do more than one session in a single day? Lots of them are super eager to do that. Some of them don't. We tend to make it one person does one session a day where we can. And then I know if I have a handful, let's say 6 or 7 of those speakers that I know could pick up another session when needed, I'll usually pick some folks like that to kind of keep them in there for if things change and we're able to kind of adapt to that and keep our schedule full. So those are all other things to kind of keep in consideration. Any thoughts there, Heather?
No, I think that's the deal. I mean, I think it's also, it's sort of the whole skeleton of things, right? Like people need breaks, people need to eat, all of that's really important too. So just thinking through just as a human, like having a 3-hour run of stuff, probably not a great idea. Like people you just need to break things up a little bit. I do really like the 20-minute lightning talk sessions. I also, like 50 or 60 minutes as well. It just sort of depends, but you have to play Tetris basically with that. and just really make sense and validate it with other people. Think through. I always say close your eyes and think about like visualizing what the day would be, and how it feels, and just think through like what a day would be. And like, because people, you can only handle so much content, in a day.
Yep.
You like, I can probably about 3 sessions, maybe 4 plus conversations. Plus I want to hang out and talk to people. Plus I want to eat, go to the bathroom, probably make a phone call Wade, whatever, like you have to really think through the human just functionality of it too, when you're putting this stuff together. So
Absolutely.
yeah. Yep. Cool. All right. Let's see.
All right.
Milestones.
So I'd say timeline.
Work back schedule, right?
Yep.
Ugh.
So I'd say this is the one that where we probably could have had this slide earlier, right? So this is the one where you're looking at your communications with your speakers, your communications with your sponsors, once you get your schedule set, that's another great milestone and a great time to ping your attendees or do an email blast to say, hey, come check out the schedule. Get a whole bunch more people signed up for the event. So yeah, those are all things where they're great pieces of that timeline. They're great milestones. Call for speakers kind of drives it, and then once you've got that set, you're kind of set on the track really for the rest of the event. But yeah, so I'd say the timelines and milestones are things that you're going to consider much more early in the process. So just knowing what those need to look like. Getting your call for speakers out there, and then the other place that the tool is very handy is with those communications with the speakers as well, right? So as soon as you've got the schedule set, that tool helps you send the emails and say, hey, you've been accepted, and waiting for them they have to have time to accept your acceptance, right? So there are things that need to happen and need to have some time in there for those things to take place.
Those comms, like speaker comms. About like, you've been accepted. All right. Do you accept? Great. Okay. And then here's the deal. Here's what the room's going to be like, what the AV is going to be like, what the, like all that kind of logisticy stuff too. Those are things to have, planned out, figured out, thought through as well. Communicating, I say, early and often with speakers, because not everybody's going to be able to make your meetings. Not everybody will read your email. So it's sort of, don't think you're being annoying. You're not.
Yep.
Send the email.
Send the email and eventually make the phone call if you need to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. We got a few minutes left for best practices and challenging tips. So there we go.
Inclusive outreach. I think we've talked about that. A bunch, lots of different perspectives. We'll keep talking about it. Transparent selection criteria. That one's a little tough because it's not like we generally don't go in with a hard set rule of our criteria. So it's if we have a couple of rules or things that we're thinking about, absolutely communicate those as part of your call for speakers. Again, it comes back to those comms, right? Just making sure everyone's on the same page with things. The easiest things early on are going to be, hey, here's how long our sessions are going to be. Here's how many we're having during the day. You might also put things out there like, here's when our speaker dinner might be, or when other parts of the event are happening so that they can plan. Folks that are coming from out of town have to accommodate travel things and stuff like that. So, yeah.
And being clear about like what is paid for and what isn't, like some events, many events, especially in the free range events, you're not going to have your travel and expenses paid for. You probably get maybe a speaker dinner. Most folks do a speaker dinner, some sort of little fun thing, but the T&E is usually not covered. Now, with other bigger events, there could be that. And there's contracts and all those sorts of things. And there's usually an event code of conduct that people have too, that you sign or that you have. So there's a couple of those things depending on the type of events. So those will all come in the communications, but things that you should be thinking about. And every event, in my humble opinion, especially in our Microsoft ecosystem, must have a code of conduct. We just full stop. So. Yeah, and I'll
even throw the code of conduct thing in there as well. I think early on we were pretty loosey-goosey with that, but I think seeing stuff across the community and on little things that can trip up, it's much better to have something like that in place if you need it, not because we're going in thinking that we're going to need it. But
agreed.
again, it's clear communication early, often, and loud, right? Make sure everyone's on the same page.
Yeah.
So,
well, we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah.
At the top of the hour. So, yeah.
Yep. And I'd say, the lessons learned, feedback, right? Feedback loop. You're going to learn stuff. You're going to change it next time, hopefully. And that's what we continue to do. And that's what we're here for, right? That's what this group is here to help with. So we're going to try and pass on things that we've learned and be resources for you guys if you have questions, and not just during this session, but whenever you need them, right? So reach out with questions. Lots of us have run events. Lots of us love to do these. Lots of us love to help other people run them. So thanks for coming and listening. And if you have questions,
thanks, Wes.
Let us know.
That's awesome. Here, I'll pop 2 more slides up. Remember, if you need some amplification, that's the AKA link in the form to put it in. We also, if you want to give us some feedback on the meeting, on this particular meeting, hit that QR code and let us know what you thought. I'll leave it there for a second. So let's see, July next month, we have another one of these event trainings, and that is, let me see, communications planning is next month. So, and then we take a break in August, and then we come back for the fall with graphics and branding and marketing and social media. So Wes and Sharon will be back again next month talking about comps. So definitely come on back. And then we also have our next general session on July 15th with Say talking about thriving against the odds, building a formidable community in unfavorable environments. So that's going to be awesome. Those are the third Tuesday of the month. So yeah, just we've got lots of content. Everything goes up on the Microsoft Community Learning YouTube channel on demand. So you can check this out there. And then we'll also be putting slides up. I'm getting a new resource page for all of our slides up on AMC very soon. So very excited about that. And just again, Wes, thank you always for your partnership and goodness. So yay, and for sharing. So yeah, awesome, everybody. Thank you for all the great comments in the chat. And I can tell you found this wonderfully helpful. I could just feel it. So yeah, and thanks for sharing who you are, what you're doing. And Raja, I love all the stats from Pakistan. Super amazing. So good stuff, everybody. So yeah, have a great rest of your day and scoot on into the weekend. So later, skaters.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Cool. All right. See you in a little while, Wes. Okay.
Yeah. See you in a bit.
All right.
Bye.
See you later. Okay. Bye, everybody. Have a great day.